Just about getting ready to go, so let's catch right up with them. Here we go.
Thanks all again to my colleagues for your cooperation today. I just want to let you know that
This is our new Speaker of the House, Greg Fergus. He seems really nice.
That you make sure your statement
Really cool.
falls within the time limit.
Oral questions, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Let's get it going. Fireworks.
After 8 years,
Get some likes going.
we can see that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost of food because of inflation.
It's expensive.
Quebecers' health is suffering because of the cost of groceries. 63% of Canadians are suffering from the exorbitant rise in grocery prices. Will the Prime Minister keep his promise to reduce food prices before Thanksgiving next Monday? Yes or no?
Will he reduce food prices by Monday?
The Right Honourable Prime
question.
Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 weeks ago,
Guy's full of it, man.
we
He's a
tabled
charmer.
the Act on Affordable Housing and Groceries, which will encourage the construction of more rental housing and bring greater competition to the grocery industry. But instead of working together with us to get there by Thanksgiving, the Conservative Party chose to obstruct the debate because they have no plan to help Canadians. You have to walk the talk, Mr. Speaker, so we would call on all members of this House to work together to pass Bill C-56 as soon as possible.
If you have to walk the walk, if you talk the talk, then he
The
must do
Honourable
the
Leader
shit
of the
walk.
Opposition. With the Liberal NDP coalition, they can push
coalitions
whatever
are
they
good.
want through, but after 8 years of government, he's the one who promised a month ago to reduce grocery prices before Thanksgiving. Will he keep that promise and reduce grocery prices to bring the price of peas down by 20%, lettuce by 33%, turkey by 37%, and
over
potatoes
here,
by 74%. He's the one who made the promise. Will he bring prices down by Thanksgiving next Monday?
What are the chances that he's going to get it done by Monday with this Affordable Groceries
Right, Honourable
Act?
Prime Minister. Mr.
crap.
Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition truly wanted to speed up support for
Good tie,
Canadians
again,
with
every day.
food prices and rents, he would not have blocked our bill's passage on affordable housing and groceries. But he would prefer to play political games and hold things up in the House instead of working with us to deliver assistance to Canadians that is so needed. We will continue to focus on bringing relief to Canadians. We will be there for Canadians on the cost of living.
Sorry,
The
I
Honourable
feel
Leader
like
of
I
the
just got
Opposition.
shit in my
Mr.
ear.
Speaker, it's impossible for us to block passage of anything because we don't have a majority. This government has a majority with its coalition with the NDP. They can pass whatever they want through this place, but instead they just raise the carbon tax and they put in place legislation to increase that tax by 300%, which will result in a 61% increase, 61 cent a litre increase on gas. Will the Prime Minister keep his promise to bring food prices down by Thanksgiving? It was his promise.
I don't think he's
Will
gonna
he
be able
keep
to do
yes
it.
or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as we saw with dental care, where we wanted to help Canadians, the Conservatives blocked that. When it comes to childcare at a reasonable cost, they tried to block that. Or when it comes to the Affordable Housing and Groceries Act, the Conservatives tried to get in the way with parliamentary tactics. The fact is, we will always be there. They've always been blocking our assistance to Canadians, but here on this side of the House, we are always focused on the relief.
Do you remember there was a time when Trudeau gave us hope?
Before I turn the
There was a
floor
time
over
that he
to
gave us
the
hope.
opposition leader, I'd just like to
Change.
remind members to please wait for the question to be
Back
asked
off,
and the
Greg.
answer to
It's
be
your
given.
second day.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
All this Prime Minister can do is blame others for the exorbitant inflation that he has imposed on Canadians' food bills. He promised a month ago that by Thanksgiving Day, food would be affordable. Yet since that time, the CEO of the food bank says that now we have more Canadians than ever relying on assistance just to eat. And a poll out just today shows that 2/3 of Canadians are actually afraid for their health because they can't buy nutritious food after 8 years of this Prime Minister. So will he keep his promise, yes or no, to deliver an affordable Thanksgiving dinner to Canadians?
What do you think he was thinking when he said he would get that done in a month? Come on.
Mr. Speaker, we
Blatant
see
lies.
that the Leader of the Opposition is always ready to play political games, because a few weeks ago we moved forward with the Affordable Housing and Groceries Act, which will help build more rental homes and increase competition, including amongst the largest groceries. But instead of working with us to move this forward before Thanksgiving, the Conservative opposition chose to obstruct debate around these measures. We're going to continue to stay focused on helping Canadians while they stay focused on playing political partisan games.
I had hope for you, Justin. I thought you were going to be a real man.
Once again,
Liar.
I would ask people to kindly refrain
Come
from
on, Greg.
talking
Back the hell up.
so that the speaker
enough.
can hear the answers from the government benches. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Better at
Speaker, the
listening.
Prime Minister can pass any bill he wants anytime he wants because he has a majority in coalition with the NDP. That's why he promised a month ago that he would make food affordable by Thanksgiving. Big blustery photo op. So my question for him is, will, by this Monday at Thanksgiving, he reverse the 22% inflation in the price of peas, the 33% inflation in the price of green salads, the 37% price inflation in the cost of frozen turkeys, and the 74% price inflation for potatoes? Will he keep his word? Will he bring the prices down? Yes or no?
He's not going to answer the question because the question's answer is no.
Mr. Speaker, we see again the Conservative opposition is always ready to fling attacks and make criticism.
Fling attacks.
But what they actually did was block our move to move forward on a Affordable Housing and Groceries Act. They obstructed debate last week in terms of delaying it. We want to move forward on this so we can help Canadians, but they stood against this act the same way they stood against $10 a day childcare, the same way they stand against the Canada Child Benefit, the same way they stood against dental care for Canadians who need it. Mr. Speaker, we will keep helping people.
I don't know, man. I had hope for my boy.
The
I was
Honourable
hoping
Member for
he'd have
Lafayette.
something to offer
Mr.
Canadians.
Speaker, Stats Can revealed last week there are nearly 500,000 non-permanent residents in Quebec, an increase of over 150,000 from last year.
Give it to 'em,
Permanent
Ale.
or otherwise, newcomers have the same needs as
Stick it
everyone
to 'em.
else.
Block
They need a
Quebec.
roof over their heads, they need to work, they need to interact with others, and they need to learn the language. Their kids need to go to school, and when they're sick, they need health care like everyone else. Will the government revise its targets so we can provide all these essential services to newcomers?
Question, Alan?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as my honourable colleague knows full well, immigration is a shared area of jurisdiction between Canada and the Government of Quebec.
It's a shared area. We're not
And
responsible.
we work together to bring people in, to meet needs for the workforce, to boost the economy and so on, while at the same time ensuring that the appropriate investments are made to settle those people and enculturate them. We'll always be there to work hand in hand responsibly with the Government of Quebec. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. The Prime Minister's a dreamer. To him, being open to the world means welcoming newcomers because it's a nice thing to do. It's as if he thinks it doesn't matter if newcomers can't find a place to live or if rents go through the roof. Doesn't matter if they don't integrate because there aren't enough French language and enculturation courses. It doesn't matter if they don't have access to basic services. Well, Mr. Speaker, yes, it is serious. It's serious and it's irresponsible of him. Will the Prime Minister revise immigration targets based on our capacity to settle newcomers?
Good question.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
This Prime Minister, though.
Mr. Speaker,
It's
I
just
disagree
talking
with
out
my
both
honourable
sides of his
colleague.
mouth, man.
I think shutting the door on newcomers is not the solution. We need more affordable housing, I agree. But that's why we announced measures like canceling the GST on the construction of new rental housing units. We will work with the provinces and municipalities to accelerate approvals and build more housing faster to better settle newcomers.
This plan is bullshit. Like saving the builders their GST, not a good idea.
Great day for the people of Manitoba.
Why is that? What happened in Manitoba? Tell us about it, Jegme.
A historic campaign, a hopeful campaign, and he ran a campaign to defend a public, universal healthcare system, and now they need a federal partner. Prime Minister.
What's going on here? Come on, Greg, get them under control. He just watches. Greg, do something.
Colleagues, order.
What? What's going on? Come on, Greg. You can't just play it like that, but
Colleagues.
That's weak.
Colleagues, I could not hear the question. Honourable member from Burnaby South from the top, please.
Oh, man. Is that how it's going to be, Greg?
I'm very happy to repeat this. Today is a bad day for Conservatives, but a great day for the people of Manitoba. Speaker-elect ran a hopeful and historic campaign. A campaign to defend a public, universal healthcare system. But now they need a federal partner. The Prime Minister has called privatization of healthcare innovation. So will the Prime Minister stop the flip-flop and come out clearly and say no to for-profit healthcare?
I find it a little bit BS when he's talking like he's against the Prime Minister.
Colleagues,
he pushes through
please.
all his bills.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Come on, Greg.
Mr. Speaker, I agree. It's a good thing that Manitobans rejected the politics of fear and division and intolerance and move forward with a progressive alternative. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to working with the new government of Manitoba on issues that matter deeply to Manitobans, whether it's building more housing, whether it's supporting the path of reconciliation, fighting climate change, and mostly moving forward on affordability for everyone. We will continue to stand up for a public health care system, including with $200 billion in health accords we're looking forward to sign with this new progressive government, Mr. Speaker.
When he uses the word affordable, do you believe it at all?
The honourable member from Burnaby
What's going to be
South.
affordable? Do you
Mr.
see
Speaker,
it like getting
during
better
the
soon?
campaign, Conservatives said they would never search the landfill for the bodies of murdered Indigenous women. They were actually trying to score political points off of a genocide. It's disgusting. And Manitobans spoke very clearly. They rejected this hateful, divisive, conservative politics. So to the Prime Minister.
Whose team are you on?
Will he do everything in his power to make sure the landfill gets searched and put in place a red dress alert to save Indigenous lives?
Nobody sports a turban like him, though. They're very, very
The right honourable Prime
not
Minister.
attractive, but they're very
Speaker,
stylish.
Words cannot express the grief and pain being felt by the Mirren and Harris families, as well as the entire community of Winnipeg. They're looking to find healing and closure right now. Our approach must be victim-centered, trauma-informed, and Indigenous-led to support healing. That's why today we announced $740,000 more in additional funding to explore in greater detail the next steps of a search. And as we announced in our last budget, we are moving forward on a red dress alert as well, Mr. Speaker.
He's got to go, guys. Coalition's got to go. There's a bunch of things got to go. Things need change. This system probably needs a good hard
The
look.
honourable Leader of the Opposition.
But it won't change.
Prime Minister pretends that he's not in a
kinda
majority
fun.
coalition with the NDP, when in fact he is, and he can pass any law he wants at any time. And that's why he promised a month ago that we'd have an affordable Thanksgiving. I know it was a ridiculous promise.
It was a
I hate to
ridiculous
have to hold him to something so absurd after he caused prices to rise so quickly. But it was his promise. So, will he reverse the food price inflation he caused by Monday so that Canadians can have an affordable turkey dinner? Yes or no?
Go on. That'll get them clapping. What's the shit answer going to be this time?
Mr. Speaker, times are difficult for Canadians right across the country, as they are
Not
difficult
tough
for
for you,
people
bud.
around the world. The
Say
war
hooky,
in
4
Ukraine,
days a
the
week.
global inflation crisis, the after effects of the pandemic have all caused real challenges. And that's why, as a government, we've been there to support people, whether it's with the grocery support, whether it's now with the Affordable Housing and Competition in Groceries Act. Now, the problem is, Mr. Speaker, is the Conservatives chose to obstruct debate on that act, to delay it. And we call on them to help us move forward on this to make sure that Thanksgiving and future Thanksgivings are more affordable for Canadians.
And it's not a good look when they blame the opposition
Years
party.
of excuses and inflationary debt and taxes,
not a
food
good
prices and mortgage prices are raging out of control. In fact, mortgage payments are up 150%. When the government borrows money, competes with Canadians for their mortgage rates, it drives up the cost of lending. So will the Prime Minister tell Canadians how much will his government borrow this year? How much?
How much are you going to break our backs now, bud?
Mr. Speaker, on the one hand, Conservatives continue to call for cuts to spending and cuts to supports for Canadians, but at the same time, they say there's not enough access to housing. And they put forward a plan, a private member's bill, to tackle the problem of housing affordability. The problem is it won't build homes fast enough, it doesn't reach enough cities, and it creates unnecessary bureaucracy, Mr. Speaker, while cutting the Accelerator Fund and ripping up our agreements to build more homes with cities like London and others across the country. On this side, we're actually linking public transit dollars to housing density, working with cities to ensure their housing proposals are ambitious, and addressing the bureaucracies to slow.
Like any of these cons, any of the parties are against bureaucracy.
Speaker, the question
Come on.
was how much? You see, when the government borrows billions of dollars out of the economy, it bids up interest rates. Those interest rates have already ballooned faster under this Prime Minister than under any other in monetary history. So once again, how much, and how much will this government borrow from the economy this year? Just the number, please.
Mr. Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to talk down Canadians and talk down the Canadian economy, we're going to continue to put Canada's strong fiscal position in service of Canadians. Yes, Mr. Speaker, our strong fiscal position. We have the lowest deficit in the G7. We have the best debt to GDP ratio in the G7. And we're one of the 3 largest countries in the world with a AAA credit rating from the bond agencies. Mr. Speaker, we have been there for Canadians, and we have been responsible stewards of the public purse, and that means we will continue to be able to support Canadians through these difficult times, including with the measures we have right now.
What about all these G7, G8, G20
The bond
stats?
agencies he brags about were the same ones who were charged because they falsely claimed the subprime crisis would never happen in the United States of America. Canadian households, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, are more indebted than any other country in the entire G7. And interest rates have gone up faster than at any time in monetary history after 8 years of this Prime Minister. All of this is driven by his massive addiction to borrowing. So the average barber or waitress knows how much they borrow. Does the Prime Minister, who's the head of a $500 billion government, even know how much he's borrowing out of the country this year?
Mr. Speaker, we see once again the Leader of the Opposition's tried and true tactics of attacking the facts when they don't suit his purposes. Mr. Speaker, the international bond rating agencies like Moody's and S&P that have ranked the top economies as AAA economies, the United States, Germany, and then Canada in the world's largest economies, have said that our fiscal plan is sustainable. As we are there to support Canadians, as we demonstrate fiscal prudence as we support Canadians through this difficult time. Now, he can wage war on experts and the facts and demonize them all he likes, but we will keep being there for Canadians grounded in the facts.
I just wanted him to be a good leader. I really kind of thought, like, it could be in the blood. Maybe he's going to be a good one.
Tell us the facts.
It's been a disappointing 8 years,
Because he
bro,
doesn't even
boys and girls.
know the facts. This is a man who is going to borrow
Look at this view.
$421 billion this year. If the government bought 421 billion apples, the price of apples would go up. When they borrow $421 billion, the price of debt goes up in higher interest rates. That's why Canadians are paying 150% more on their mortgages. How much will this government force Canadians to spend on national debt interest this year?
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
I know Canadians won't be taking any condescending economics lessons from the Leader of the Opposition after he proposed to Canadians that a good way of avoiding inflation was to buy crypto, Mr. Speaker. That was his economic counsel to Canadians, and if they had followed it, they would have lost almost half of their life savings. Mr. Speaker,
we're getting into the
understand,
weeds
we won't
now.
be taking any economics lessons from that guy.
That's a good one, Justin. Good one. That is good. Cryptocurrency. Money for idiots.
Colleagues, I know that we are caught up with the passion of the debate. I ask you to always direct your comments through the chair and to also make comments which are not disruptive to the House. The honourable member of the official opposition.
Mr. Speaker, that Prime Minister should be taking economics lessons from everyone. Everyone. This is a guy who said budgets balance themselves right before he doubled the debt. This is a guy who said he doesn't think about monetary policy right before he led interest rates to rise faster than at any time in Canadian history. This is a guy who, up until I told him, didn't even know how much he was borrowing out of the Canadian economy. This is a guy who's doubled the rent, doubled mortgage payments, and doubled the needed down payment. Mr. Speaker, it's about time he took some lessons. Why doesn't he go to the library and do a little bit of studying?
They're scrapping today, guys. Let's get it going. Some likes, share, subscribe, comment. How do you like what's going on? This stuff is interesting, man. It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. Look, they're getting her going, man. They're getting, and then Greg's going to tone it down, bring it back.
Colleagues, I ask us to make sure that our comments are not disruptive to the House. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to play his partisan games and focus on me, we're going to remain focused on Canadians. We move forward with an Affordable Groceries and Affordable Housing Act that they have continued to obstruct debate on. We've continued to deliver things for Canadians like dental care for low-income Canadians that they stood against. We continue to deliver $10 a day childcare in places across the country that they campaigned against. They continue to campaign against the Canada Child Benefit. We see, Mr. Speaker, they're always there to make clever political arguments. They're never there to actually support Canadians like we are.
Round up. You can hear him with the little inhales. Check it out. What?
The honourable member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday a group of 25 doctors from the Montérégie
He's a
and
finger
Eastern
sniffer.
Townships
When you watch
made
him in
a
the
clear
seats, you can see him all the time sniffing his
The housing
fingers.
crisis is undermining Quebecers' health.
You can't.
But the Prime Minister continues
funny,
to
though.
withhold
Just he
$900
sniffs his
million
fingers.
earmarked for housing construction in Quebec at a time when the housing crisis is turning into a public health crisis. As you know, Mr. Speaker, the first principle of medicine is do no harm. When will the Prime Minister stop harming housing construction and pay Quebec its $900 million?
Is that how much money we're going to borrow?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Poilievre was saying earlier?
Mr. Speaker, over the past few years, we've always been there to invest along with Quebec in housing, and we'll keep doing that. The federal government does have a role to play in the building of housing and affordable rental units, including in Quebec. So we're working with our Quebec counterparts to advance a plan that will work for Quebec and allow for more housing to be built more quickly. All levels of government share responsibility for this, and we hope that we will move together in partnership urgently. The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. There's something the Prime Minister doesn't get, and that is that this also involves people living in substandard housing with no alternative. It's about people who don't even have a roof over their heads. People don't have the luxury of waiting for the federal government to stop wrangling over jurisdictional issues. As far as they're concerned, there's no valid excuse for withholding $900 million in housing construction funds. They're right. There's no excuse. When is the Prime Minister going to stop looking for excuses and pay out the $900 million?
Did Poilievre say he's going to borrow $400 billion?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's a shame that the Bloc keeps picking fights where there is no reason for one. We are working hand in hand with the government of Quebec in order to address this housing crisis. Yes, we're investing $900 million and more in housing construction together with the government of Quebec. It's good news for Quebecers that we're working together so well with the Legault government. Unfortunately, the Bloc is just trying to pick a fight. It's too bad for Quebecers, but we are going to focus on our principles and on helping Quebecers.
Where's Chrystia Freeland today? There must be a Nazi reunion somewhere.
The opposition.
Good news headline.
Where is she? Lemon face.
Apartment rents are on the verge of declining due to massive new supply. Unfortunately, that's a CNBC headline from the United States of America. Here's a CBC headline in Canada. Rent is going up more than $100 a month right now.
A month.
And another one. The Prime Minister's
who can
favorite,
afford
the
that?
Toronto Star, that this year we're having worse construction numbers than during the lockdown. Why is construction up and rent down south of the border when it's just the opposite here in Canada?
It's all screwed up. Good question, Pierre. You shouldn't have talked about that cryptocurrency back then, though. That was pretty stupid.
We know we need to build more rental constructions more quickly. And that's why we put forward a bill that removes the GST from new rental constructions across the country and on the federal side. And that is actually spurring thousands of new units to be built across the country. It's a very exciting measure, except unfortunately, Conservatives have chosen to obstruct debate on that particular measure. Why won't they line up with Canadians? Why don't they see that building housing supply is going to help Canadians right across the country? Why won't they line up with us and support Canadians across the country?
I thought his question was about why is construction down.
Mr. Speaker, he's the one that's been obstructing that promise for the last 8 years since he made it. But since that 8-year period, the average rent has doubled. Mortgage payments have doubled. The needed down payment has doubled. It has been double trouble. And after doubling the cost, he created a $4 billion so-called accelerator to build homes. How many homes have been completed?
Good question.
Chers collègues, s'il vous plaît. Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, following a request from the Minister of Housing to scale up their ambition, Vaughan's City Council passed a bold housing resolution to unlock even more affordable family-sized homes. That is a direct result of the Housing Accelerator Fund. This is a concrete example of how the federal government can lead and ensure more affordable housing options so our seniors, students, families can grow in their communities. We look forward to more municipalities joining us to ensure all Canadians have a safe and affordable place to call home.
This just in, the Prime Minister can read.
Mr. Speaker, the question was not how many resolutions have been passed. You can't live in a resolution. You can't live in a photo op. You can't live in a press release or a promise.
Pretty funny.
He created this fund a year and a half ago, promising to, quote, accelerate housing. So how many houses have been completed? And by completed, I mean houses with walls and roofs and doors and people living in them. How many are completed? How many?
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition's housing plan consists of wagging a finger at municipalities and saying, you better build more homes or else. Mr. Speaker, we have a better approach than that. We actually work with municipalities to build more homes, and we're seeing the results of that housing plan. Recently, alongside British Columbia and the City of Vancouver, the member for Vancouver Centre announced the groundbreaking of the construction of 154 new affordable housing units close to transit in the heart of Davie Village, which will also house Community, which is a non-profit organization providing safe and secure services for individuals and families living with HIV/AIDS.
This also just in, but not a very good reader.
You cannot live in an announcement. You can't live in a press release. You can't live in the Prime Minister's talking points, which is having so much trouble reading, Mr. Speaker. This Prime Minister is now presiding over a massive decline in home building. In fact, last year, Canada built fewer homes than in 1972. And this year, housing starts are down 32%. And by the way, to end the suspense, the number of homes that have actually been built by this so-called housing accelerator, zero, nada, nothing. When will you stop the talk, end the bureaucracy, and finally get something built?
What? Good question. No wonder he plays hooky so often.
Speaker, over the past number of years, over 2 million families have got into homes because of our strategic investments in housing.
Stick to the reading, bud.
We just added to that with the Housing Accelerator Fund that is moving forward to remove barriers and get more housing built faster, which is exactly what we're doing, for example, with the City of London, where Mayor Morgan said this is the most significant housing investment in London history, where over the next 3 years alone, we'll build over 2,000 additional housing units in London. We know this is a challenge that we need to solve together, and that is what we're going to do in partnership with municipalities.
I wanted you to be good, Justin. I wanted you to be a good guy.
In 2021,
this
the Prime
clown
Minister
too
made election promises
to
stop renovictions and to deter unfair rent increases. Well, 2 years later, 500 renters in Toronto are on strike because of renovictions and high rent increases, as well as poor conditions. Now, the Prime Minister and Liberal MPs from Toronto are nowhere to be seen. Those promises, meaningless. How can the Prime Minister justify the broken promises to Canadian renters?
Then they'll be having drinks after work together. Like, don't act like you're not buddies.
Mr. Speaker, we have been there consistently to partner with municipalities and provinces where they've been willing to improve conditions for renters, to support the building of new apartment complexes, to ensure availability of more affordable housing. There have been a lot of progress made, but there's more to do. That's why we were so pleased to see the Government of Ontario join in with us on eliminating the GST on new rental apartment buildings. These are the construction. These are things that are going to make a big difference, and we'll continue to work with our partners, including with the Mayor of Toronto, to make sure we're protecting renters.
We thought he had potential to be a good leader, right?
But I'm not done. In Quebec, 25 doctors have made a heartfelt appeal. Their patients' health is getting worse because of the housing crisis. After 8 years of the Liberals in power, rents have doubled. That's their record.
The NDP.
When will the Prime Minister stop telling us, I should have, I could have? When will he finally take this crisis seriously?
Makes that turban look good, though. He does.
Mr. Speaker, we have worked closely with the Government of Quebec for years to invest in housing, and we are currently working hard to implement our investment of $900 million to help with the housing crisis in Quebec. We know that many people are concerned, and that is why we are taking action in partnership with the Government of Quebec, as we are doing throughout the country, hand in hand with our partners at municipalities and in the provinces.
You could have been something, Pierre, or Justin. You could have been something, Justin.
Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hello.
Today is Sisters in Spirit
Leah
Day
Taylor
and the
Rule.
National Day of Action for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and 2S LGBTQI+ people. We honor the lives, memories, and spirits of the too many Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQI+ people that are missing or have been murdered across Canada. As we see in Winnipeg with the Prairie Green landfill, where human remains of loved ones, victims of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls may lie, more work needs to be done. Can the Prime Minister please explain what the Government of Canada is undertaking with Long Plain First Nation to address this heart-wrenching situation?
Reading is bad enough, but like from a book? Reading. Come on.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard firsthand the grief and pain of the families and community, and our hearts are heavy, knowing how difficult this has been for them. They're looking to find healing and closure right now, and it's important that we support them in this process. That's why today we announced $740,000 in additional funding to explore in greater detail the next steps of a search. We will continue to work in partnership with Indigenous leaders, families, and survivors for a victim-centered, trauma-informed, and Indigenous-led approach to healing.
No comment.
Mr. Speaker, 8
years
ago, the Prime Minister promised in his 2015 platform that he would, and I quote, repurpose all available federal lands and buildings at a low cost for affordable housing in communities where there is a pressing need. Can he tell us how many homes have resulted from repurposing these buildings and lands?
He's not going to answer this question. I got a feeling he's not going to say goose egg.
Mr. Speaker, in 2017, we moved forward with the National Housing Strategy, which was a direct response to the fact that for 10 years under the Conservatives, the federal government had removed itself from providing housing solutions for Canadians. Over the following years, around 2 million Canadians accessed new homes, new places to live because of the work of that National Housing Strategy, and we're continuing that work, working closely in partnership with municipalities and provinces, doing things like eliminating the GST on rental construction of new apartment buildings. These are things that would be accelerated if the Conservatives stopped blocking them in this House.
The question was how many? That's not an answer to a how many question.
We're happy to cooperate. We're just looking for one little detail. There's 37,000 federal buildings representing 6.2 million square meters of space. The Prime Minister promised 8 years ago that he would repurpose some of that space to create homes. How many have been created?
How many? So somebody asked you a question, how many?
Like I said, Mr. Speaker, our National Housing Strategy has delivered homes has supported in delivering the homes for close to 2 million Canadians, families, but we're going to continue to do the work necessary, working with partners in municipalities and provinces on delivering housing solutions. One of those parts of the solutions is eliminating the GST on new rental construction, and that's something, unfortunately, that the Conservatives can support with right now if they stop obstructing and slowing down debate on the bill that we put forward for Canadians.
Not even no applause that time.
Speaker, there
His
seems
own
to be
people
a
giving up
problem
on him.
with the microphone. The Prime Minister didn't hear the question. There are 37,000 federal buildings, 6 million plus square meters that could be converted into housing, not to mention thousands of acres of federal land. Now, the Prime Minister agreed that that could be done because he promised it 8 years ago. So after 8 years of doubling housing costs, can he tell us how many homes have been created by repurposing federal buildings and lands? Just the number, please.
Mr. Speaker, over the past years, we've invested close to $40 billion to build and renovate close to 500,000 homes. That's 500,000 homes.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister doesn't need to answer it because my deputy leader did an order paper question. He asked for the government to tell us how many homes have resulted from repurposing land and buildings of the federal government. The number? 13.
13. Double digits.
Not 1,300, not 13,000. 13 homes.
What? Only
Mr. Speaker.
13?
That's
not good, guys.
Homes homes
Not
per year.
good.
How many millennia would it take then to build the 3.5 million homes we need
How many
for
millennia?
Canadians?
Good. All right. Get her going, Pierre. It's a good one.
Mr. Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to play rhetorical games, we're focused on building the range of solutions that we're going to need to actually solve for this housing crisis, which involves things like removing GST from purpose-built rental construction, moving forward with the rental construction financing initiative that we've been working on for a number of years now and delivering, moving forward the Housing Accelerator Fund, $4 billion for municipalities like Vaughan, like London, like the Lower Mainland to build new homes, and continuing to work on making the rental market safer for all Canadians. These are things we will continue to do because Canadians are counting on all of us.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe-Lille. Mr. Speaker, the RCMP is hiring unilingual Anglophones in high-level bilingual positions, people who not only do not speak French, but who are not even taking French classes. The RCMP is clearly violating the Official Languages Act. Mr. Speaker, when even the police are violating the law, there's clearly a high-level problem. Despite the official languages reform, there is still a culture of contempt for French in the federal government. Will the Prime Minister remind the RCMP that it must respect the law?
Do you think there's a contempt for French? It would appear to me there isn't.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
But I
yes,
don't know.
Mr. Speaker, let's be very clear. The principle of bilingualism is fundamental for this government. We have modernized the Official Languages Act. With the implementation of Bill C-13 this year, we expect the RCMP to respect the principle, and we expect them to hire bilingual individuals to fill bilingual positions. And I know that the Minister of Public Safety will be speaking directly this afternoon with the Commissioner of the RCMP. The Honourable Member. Well, Mr. Speaker, this case with the RCMP is a clear example of the culture of contempt for French within the federal government. It's one thing for the RCMP to hire unilingual Anglophones. And it's one thing for them not to take French classes, but the worst part is that no one has even thought to require them to take classes. No one is even trying, even for appearance's sake, to try to ensure that the law is respected at a minimum level. That's a great example of this culture of contempt for French. Will this Prime Minister finally understand that he needs to take action?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be a Poilievre fan. I don't think so.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Well, as I just said, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Public Safety will speak directly with the Commissioner of the RCMP this afternoon. This is a concern that we share. And we expect federal institutions like the RCMP to respect the Official Languages Act.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
After 8 years.
Here we go.
8
years.
Long years.
8 long years.
8 miserable years, Mr. Speaker, of this Prime Minister. He is not worth the cost of energy. 2,800 Nova Scotians have had their power cut off. And this day, the Nova Scotia government reported that 37% of Nova Scotians now live in energy poverty. Because of this Prime Minister's carbon tax, which he now wants to quadruple up to 61 cents a litre, will he at least let his Atlantic caucus have a free vote on our motion to axe the tax to bring home lower prices?
Do you think what he said is true about Nova Scotia? I live in Nova Scotia.
Mr. Speaker, what the Conservative Party refuses to understand is our plan to fight climate change is above and before everything else a plan on affordability. 8 out of 10 Canadians do better off with this price on pollution in the jurisdictions where it's been brought in. This is something that means that even as we fight climate change, which is something Atlantic Canadians know all too well is important with hurricanes like Fiona or the wildfires we saw this summer, we're putting more money back in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians. This is how we fight climate change and support Canadians at the same time when Conservatives want to take away checks like the Climate Action Incentive.
This is one of the problems with this period, is that they get up there and they they say a little piece of truth, and then a lot of stuff that is not true.
Long, painful, costly years. This carbon tax is not worth the cost. And it's not just me saying it. The Liberal member for Avalon has said, and I quote, "We are punishing rural areas of our country and the most vulnerable people in society." End quote. Other Liberal MPs like to go back to Atlantic Canada and say they disagree with the Prime Minister's plan to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. Unfortunately, they lose their spines when they get to the House of Commons. So will he stop bullying them, let them have a free vote, so that we can pass our motion to axe the tax and bring home lower prices?
It sounds good. It sounds good.
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, apparently unlike the Leader of the Opposition, I spent a lot of time with rural Canadians this summer who were heartbroken
At the
over
cabin,
the
playing
wildfires
hooky.
that devastated their communities, the record floods, the record heat waves and droughts that everyone is...
Come on, Greg.
Greg.
Tell these guys.
Hiding in your cottage doesn't count.
Todd, in favor?
Come on, Greg. Pull them in.
Prime Minister, you have 17 seconds left on the clock.
Mr. Speaker, in all the conversations I had with rural Canadians across the country this summer, they were devastated by the impacts of record wildfires, of floods, of droughts, of heat waves. They see the impact of climate change, and they know that we need to continue to fight climate change while putting money back in their pockets. That's exactly what our price on pollution does. That's what we're going to continue to do instead of eliminating.
Mr. Speaker, hiding out and going surfing in Tofino does not count for spending time with rural Canadians.
It's pretty funny, man. Good
Obviously,
one.
he's not listening to what they have to say, because after 8 years, his carbon tax is not worth the cost. He now wants to quadruple the tax to 61 cents a litre. Even the Liberal government in Newfoundland and Labrador is calling on him to axe the tax. They agree with me. So, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister listen to the Liberal government in Newfoundland and Labrador and his own Liberal caucus from Atlantic Canada and axe the tax?
Before the Prime Minister responds, I would like to inform colleagues that in the week following the parliamentary break, the speakers will be issuing some reflective guidelines as to the type of things that we should mention and not mention that will not derange the House.
Seems like a
so I just
reverend
want to
or
let
something.
members all know that. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
That's that.
Mr. Speaker, I suggested the Leader of the Opposition speak to people in Stephenville, Newfoundland, who've seen historic investments looking at them from Germany because of the investments in hydrogen in the clean economy and offshore wind. I suggest he speaks to his member from St. Thomas, Ontario, where the Volkswagen plan is going to land because of the historic leadership we've shown in clean electricity and drawing in innovation investments. Mr. Speaker, you haven't heard the Leader of the official opposition talk at all about the benefits
Did aim in the
of
rally.
investment on Volkswagen, because he has no plan for the future of the economy.
Where's Chrystia Freeland?
The Honourable Member for Laval-Les-Îles. Mr. Speaker, climate change is a major priority right now, and Canadians from coast to coast are asking for concrete action
They're teeing up the
in
question.
the area of developing new technologies. Can the Prime Minister tell this House about the actions taken by the government to promote the development of green industry,
So dull.
not only in Canada, but also in Quebec, Mr. Speaker?
Whatever.
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Retire.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for his question and for his excellent work. Last week,
From a
I
piece of paper now,
was with
Trudeau.
the Minister
Come
of
on.
Innovation and Premier Legault to announce the historic North Volt Agreement. Our government is working
So
very
set up.
hard to attract to Canada investments that will enable us to create more jobs and stimulate economic growth throughout the country. With this announcement, we will be consolidating Quebec's position in the
Anyhow,
automobile sector.
We're gonna
for the next
ready to go
decades.
right now. We had hope for you,
And
Justin.
this is the first electric vehicle battery plant in Quebec. It's great news.
Mr. Speaker, when you tax the fuel of the farmers who make the food and the truckers who ship the food, then you tax all who buy the food. And after 8 years, this Prime Minister's carbon tax is just not worth the cost. But he hasn't got the memo. Now he wants to quadruple the tax to 61 cents a litre with firm support from the NDP. Both parties motivated by greed, government greed, to take more and more money away from poor and working class families who are hit hardest by this tax. Will they stop the greed? Vote with us today to axe the tax so that we can bring home lower prices.
Axe the tax. Where's Melissa Lantzman today? She hasn't gotten up here to
Mr.
speak at all.
Speaker, what the honourable leader of the opposition refuses to understand is you cannot have a plan for the future of the economy and jobs in this country if you don't also have a plan for the environment and to fight climate change. That is what we have demonstrated over the past 8 years as we've seen emissions come down faster than any of our colleagues in the G7 as we continue to move forward in a way that both delivers affordability for families and jobs for the coming generations. These are the things that Canadians need for the future. That is what our plan is delivering.
You would do probably better to speak about like the hope of the future rather than the success of the recent past.
And energy. With a policy that lowers emissions like we did, rather than raising taxes like he does. Actually, emissions are up. That is the great irony. Emissions are rising under this Prime Minister, which proves that he and his carbon tax are not worth the cost. After 8 years, can he not see the pain and suffering in the many, many streets of people who are lined up to go into food banks because of his tax? Will he do the honorable and compassionate thing and vote with us today to axe the tax?
Axe the tax. Axe the tax. Get rid of it.
Mr. Speaker, what the honourable leader of the opposition continues to put forward is a plan to double down on oil and gas at a time where that is not going to build the careers, the future, the innovation that Canadians need. I was pleased to meet with a number of Albertan business leaders last night to talk about how we're going to work with them, including in the oil and gas industry, to reduce emissions, to build a brighter future that includes great jobs for Albertans and workers in the energy sector right across the country. We have a plan to fight climate change and grow the economy for the future. The Conservative Party has none.
Listen to that little in his voice when you can hear it. Once you hear it once, you never stop hearing it.
The only thing the Prime Minister has is a second carbon tax that will apply to Quebec. With the support of the Bloc Québécois, which is joining with the federal government at a time when the leader of the Bloc Québécois is actually vacationing, using up more fuel in a jet. Will the Prime Minister and his friend, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, will they cancel their holiday plans and the carbon tax to protect the environment and Quebecers' wallets?
I don't think they're going to do all those things. What do you think?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We're going to do all of those things.
Mr. Speaker, we are discussing issues today that are serious for Canadians, like their futures and jobs. Whereas the leader of the Conservative Party is continuing with his partisan attacks.
What's going on here?
Colleagues, le décorum est vraiment important.
Decorum is very important in this House.
Oh, man. Please, man.
And that is why I must insist that only one person rises and speaks at a time. We must respect that rule. And we must behave in a way that is worthy of this chamber. The Right Honourable Prime Minister, please start over.
It is his first week, so...
Mr. Speaker, we will always be there to support Canadians. We will always be there to work closely with all those who want to build a strong economy and protect Canadians' future. That is what people want from us, and that's what we are doing we take it very seriously, whereas some people in this House do not take it seriously and prefer personal attacks over substantive debate, rather. Canadians will have to judge, but I will continue to work closely with the NDP, the Bloc Québécois, and the Green Party to build a stronger future for all Canadians, despite the Conservatives' partisan games.
Seem kind of pissed off there.
Then I have député de Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker,
He's got a
Canadians
book,
are
oh
concerned
no.
about the cost of housing, and while the
Francesco
Conservatives are letting partisan politics
Sabara.
get in the way of important legislation that would increase the number of affordable units
This little fool
built in
is
Canada,
going to come out here,
our
read from a
government is
book.
working side by side with
This
cities and the
is
provinces
just
to
bad
increase the housing
organization.
supply.
Bad
Can
organization.
the Prime Minister share with this House some of the
organizing.
concrete actions taken in my community of Vaughan
Imagine
by
how
the government to fight the housing
lame
crisis?
you must be to have to read your 15-second spiel.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the
Now he's
MD
gonna
for
read
Vaughan
something back.
Woodbridge for his hard work and his leadership.
Hard work.
Mr. Speaker,
Good job reading from a book. It's hard.
The Accelerator Fund in action. Yesterday, following a request from the Minister of Housing, Vaughan City Council passed a bold housing resolution to unlock more affordable family-sized homes. And we're excited to share their plan has now been approved. While the leader of the opposition's plan is to cut the Accelerator Fund,
it's just so
destroying the momentum
lazy.
we've built with cities like London and now
Make
Vaughan,
it interesting,
we're
at
going to
least.
continue to work
Christ
to build
on a
more
bike.
homes faster now.
Reading from a page, having your little buddy ask you a question that he read from a book. That pisses me off, man.
Mr. Speaker, I know the Conservatives love a history lesson, so let's go back in time when the Conservatives were in power. Ground beef went up 128%. Corned beef went up 89%. Bread went up by 60%. And guess what the Conservatives did? The response was to give billions in tax giveaways to wealthy corporations. Now, after 8 years of Liberals, food prices have also increased by 30%. Now,
What
the
are you
Prime
doing, Jimmy?
Minister's solution is to ask greedy CEOs nicely to stabilize their prices.
Dad, come
When will
on.
he have the courage to take on the real problem, which is corporate greed?
All right.
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Canadian grocery bills are just too high. That's why we're taking immediate action.
What do you
We
know?
called the top
What do you think
CEOs
he
to
knows
Ottawa to
about
discuss how
grocery
they can make
prices?
grocery more affordable. And should they fail to show results, their inaction will have consequences. We're also moving forward on competition reforms because we know increased competition is good for consumers. Unfortunately, the Conservative Party has chosen to obstruct debate on the competition bill reform, but we're going to continue to move forward because that's what Canadians need.
Greg, seriously. Come on, man.
L'honorable député de Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, while the minister responsible for people with disabilities says it's going to be 18 more
Who invited
months
this
until
guy?
anyone receives the Canada Disability Benefit, Canadians with disabilities continue to disproportionately live in poverty across the country. Like me, the Prime Minister
I live
has
with my
never
mom.
had the experience of living under the crushing weight
Of my
of
mom.
legislated poverty. But he can do something about it. He could immediately introduce the Disability Emergency Response Benefit as the disability community has called for. Will he do it?
Yeah, he's making some good points. He needs some attention.
Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question and agree that there is much
Yeah.
more to be done in supporting
is.
Canadians with disabilities. But we've done a significant amount over the past years, and we will continue to address the ongoing barriers faced by persons living with disabilities. We're focused on improving the lives of Canadians in the long term, and the historic Canada Disability Benefit is just one of the steps our government is taking. Our government is looking forward to doing the work directly with the Disability Committee, community, completely in the spirit of nothing about us without us.
Do you guys think that Christia and
That brings
Karina
to
are
the
hanging
end of
out with the
question period.
grandfathers?
I see
That's why
rise
they're
on a
not in
point of
Parliament
order
today?
is a member from Port Coquitlam.
Port Moody Coquitlam, Mr. Chair, thank you. I just wanted to ask if, for unanimous consent, Mr. Speaker, to make my statement over. There was some accidental walking in front of my shot.
All right, guys, that's it for today. It was a lot of fun. We're going to be having more fun watching this clown circus making the sausage. It's terrible. But if we're going to learn about Canadian politics, we are going to get involved again. This is probably where it starts, and we'll be having some fun along the way. Anyway, we'll be doing shows. Every day there's a question period. I'm making some shorts and some other funny videos, some shorter stuff. Check us out. I'm EhrenEmm. Like, subscribe, comment. If you have any feedback, I'm just starting. Love to hear what anybody thinks. And yeah, we're going to go out. Thanks again for watching. Catch you next time.